Well, starting tomorrow, new rules are going into effect that will shake up the way that homes are bought and sold across the U.S. And that means that home buyers could pay lower commissions to realtors. Jolene Kent has more.
Buyers, sellers, and agents are all going to be feeling the effects of this settlement starting this weekend. And the idea here is to increase transparency after a major antitrust lawsuit. Now, first, you're going to see a big shift in agent commissions. Real estate agents normally charge 5 to 6% commission, and they would split that now with the buyer's agent that is typically paid by those selling the home. Now, under this new rule, buyers and sellers will now have the opportunity to negotiate costs with their respective agents. That means buyers may pay the commission fee to their real estate agents. There are also changes when it comes to listing a home for sale on the MLS, the multiple listing service. That's that ubiquitous tool that helps real estate professionals share and learn about properties. Agents will no longer be allowed to use the service to offer to pay a commission to agents representing potential home buyers. They will also be required to remove all broker compensation fields. Now, you might remember, why did this all happen? Back in March, the National Association of Realtors announced that these rules were going to be part of a landmark $418 million settlement to end an antitrust lawsuit. The association was challenged over allegedly forcing sellers to pay up to a 6% realtor commission in which they allegedly drove up home prices. But the idea here is to reduce costs and make it more transparent, but also increase commitments to real estate agents out there when it comes to buying and selling homes. Jolene Kent, CBS News, Los Angeles.